I'm obsessive.
Yeah.
There's a lot to do.
If you weren't doing this, what would you be doing?
I'd open a barbecue restaurant. I think there's something therapeutic about the cooking. I've never had much time for it.
Sometimes the thoughts about work will creep in, and it's frustrating because you don't want to be thinking about that on a Sunday night maybe, or Saturday afternoon, or even 10, 11 o'clock at night during the week. Is that a struggle sometimes?
Yeah, of course. I'm obsessive.
Yeah.
There's a lot to do. I love the business. There's a big opportunity. I know a lot of people are counting on us.
Talk to me about work from home and the policy at Checkatrade and what your thoughts on it as well. It's always in the news at the moment. What is Checkatrade's work from home policy?
Yeah, we're mostly in the office these days.
4 or 5 days?
Yeah, 4 days. And it's made a huge difference for us in terms of positivity and our, just describe it as the overall office environment. Whenever somebody comes to visit our office, it's the first thing they say is this feels like a kind of pre-COVID office.
Hello and welcome to Boardroom Uncovered from City AM with me, Jon Robinson. My guest for this episode is the CEO of Checkatrade, Jambu Palaniappan. After taking on his first leadership role at an early age, the CEO has held top jobs all across the world in a career that's taken him from Silicon Valley to Portsmouth-headquartered Checkatrade via Dubai. But with the issue of fake reviews and rogue traders still hitting UK customers, how is Checkatrade attempting to stop cowboy builders and maintain trust in the online marketplace? Without any further delay, let's dive in. Well, Jambu, thank you very much for coming on Boardroom Uncovered. It's great to have you.
Thank you for having me.
I suppose I've got to start with the issue of trust. You're in the trust business, it seems to me. People come to your website and trust that the reviews and the tradespeople that you've got involved in your company are trustworthy, I suppose. How does that sit with you? That must be quite a difficult thing to maintain.
Trust is really a core part of who we are. If you think about the foundation story of our business, Checkatrade was founded in 1998 after a tornado tore through a town in West Sussex, and the town was infiltrated with rogue trades. And our business started as a directory of trusted trades whose work could be verified and provided quality service. And 26 years later, while we've evolved to be a digital business, that foundation of trust is really critical. We go through a 12-step vetting check for all members that join the platform. We denied over 1,300 applications last year for members who tried to get on the platform and didn't meet our standards. And that trust piece is a really critical component of why consumers trust us, but also why quality tradespeople want to be members of the platform.
Because rogue traders do get through. You've had so many people be rejected, but there are still stories out there of rogue traders being on the platform and then taking advantage of people in the UK. How do you combat that?
Yeah, so I think it's important to remember the scale of the platform. Over 2.2 million consumers used Checkatrade last year. And for us, that trust is a really important part of why they use it. We have a couple of mechanisms in place to help support customers in the rare event that something does go wrong. The first is we have a customer support team that is available and can support consumers through those challenges that they have. And in the vast majority of situations, the work is rectified, right? And I think that's important because if you get a recommendation from your neighborhood WhatsApp group, your neighbor's not going to do that for you, right? The second is we have an actual financial guarantee as part of jobs that are done on the Checkatrade platform. It's a £1,000 guarantee for workmanship and quality that will help consumers in the event that something does go wrong. And that's something that we have enough confidence in the platform and tradespeople on the platform in to actually support directly. And then the third is, in the rare event that something does go wrong, we help consumers with the process in order to file the appropriate claims and support them in that transition. Is there more we can do? Yes, but I think it's important to also realize that the scale of the platform is an important part of how we can help support consumers through those challenges, and certainly the best place for consumers to feel protected.
That's really interesting that there's a financial element of this because we got our house repointed last year and the builder just didn't finish the job. 95% of it, yes, but the 5% of it didn't do, and we got him through a neighbour's Facebook group basically, and good reviews from the local community, but it was a bit of a nightmare in the end. But it's interesting that if we'd have gone through Checkatrade, that might have been a different story.
100%. And I think part of it is the tradespeople care deeply about their review score. They care deeply about the history of reviews. It's their pride, but also their livelihood. And so their incentives are to ensure that jobs are done right. Again, in the rare event that something goes wrong, majority of the time, tradespeople come out and fix it themselves because they care deeply about that feedback loop and their livelihood.
It's not going to be lost on the viewers and the people listening that you're not from Sussex, you're not from these shores originally. Tell me about your childhood growing up in the States.
Yeah, it was a really interesting journey to come here with you all today. I'm originally from San Francisco, from the Bay Area. That's where I was born and raised. My parents originally from India. They moved to the US to study. They're both engineers. My mom's a software developer. My dad works in semiconductor manufacturing. Not a lot of people's moms are software developers. And I thought everybody's mom was a software developer, if that makes sense. But it really shaped my view of how I think about what is possible, right? To grow up in that environment at that time where the wave of the internet and everything that came from it was really built. And I think what it really taught me was a couple of things. One is I'm exceptionally grateful to my parents for the incredible sacrifice that they went through to move to the US and help us understand the potential of ourselves. But also, I think, to really see the powerful implication of technology in accelerating our lives and improving how we live them. And I think that's a really important principle for me. I ended up here in the UK very circuitously through initially a role at Uber, where I was leading Uber's international expansion into emerging markets, and then led Uber's business in the Middle East and Africa, and then eventually moved to Europe to run Uber Eats in this part of the world. Have got an English wife, which is also a big part of the real reason. And we've got two daughters as well that have London accents. So every morning I still have that bizarre moment of, hang on, how did this happen? But this is home, and I'm really grateful for it.
I mean, talking about the US, what do you think the US is doing better than the UK right now?
I think for me, the thing that I notice in terms of where Britain can improve is around much more optimism in terms of what's possible, right? There's an incredible education system here. There's incredible ambition. And I think there's a lot of what makes great foundations of a growth economy. I've spent some time mentoring students in East London at a school. And what I find is over the 5 years or so that I've mentored those students, at the beginning, they all wanted to be bankers, right? They thought that was the kind of goal. Over time, their ambitions have evolved. They're really interested in technology and entrepreneurship. And
working at Checkatrade.
That's great.
I'm sure that's the idea.
I'm sure someone will join sometime. But I think that's great to see that evolution. And I think my question is, how can all of us, business, government, schools, support that evolution towards creation as really the goal versus extraction, right? And I think for me, that optimism, the ambition, that relentless positivity is a really key part of what's required to run any business, but I think is also something that we could benefit more from.
What do you think about the UK government's growth agenda?
I think it's a tough situation, right? And I think there are many factors that have contributed to it that are all conflated together. My sense is that folks are very well intentioned, right? And we've had really positive engagement with government about what the potential levers are. But I think there's still uncertainty in terms of the impact of those levers, right? And I think it's really important to bring clarity, particularly to small business. If I think about our members and the type of business that they run and represent, sole trader who installs guttering in the Midlands, or a small gas engineering shop in Portsmouth, they need support, right? Things like the national insurance change were impactful for those sorts of small businesses. And so for me, I think there is more to do to actually reduce barriers to growth, particularly for small business. And that's something that we're really in active dialogue with government on.
How would you reduce those barriers?
I think there's two really important principles that touch our industry. One is around planning permission and rules, and really allowing for more growth in terms of sectors, right? I redid the windows in my house not that long ago when I got a quote to do them. And
through Checkatrade.
yeah, well, this was before I worked there. And this was, what I was surprised about was the highest EPC rated windows I could get for my home were C rated windows. And I asked why. And the reason was that the council rules actually prohibited more energy efficient windows from being installed because they went against certain look and feel rules.
Right.
And I don't live in a listed property or anything like that. So I thought that was interesting. And my energy bills are higher for it. And so I think there's a lot to do around planning, regulation, and liberalization. It's great to see that the government's tackling that, but I think there's more to do there. I think the second big area for us is around the acute trade shortage in Britain, right? Britain needs about 1 million new trades to enter the sector over the next decade plus in order to just meet existing projections of demand. That's because of retirements, people who've left because of Brexit, et cetera. And I think there's still more government can do to support that, moving the apprenticeship levy towards much more of a skills-based program and allowing a mechanism for businesses to be easier to start in the trade sector. And I think those two things can be big levers, but they do require belief and commitment to get through.
You worked all across the world in so many different senior leadership roles. What's the difference between doing business in the UK to doing business in the US?
I think there's a lot of similarities, right, culturally and in terms of how business and teams operate. I think there's actually a very unique difference that does impact things from a macro level down, and that's actually on the capital market liquidity. So if you think about particularly stamp duty on shares, that actually disincentivizes a liquid capital market. And I know there's broader questions right now about Britain's capital markets and how to encourage great British and European businesses to list here. But many of them are listing in New York or in Amsterdam or other places. And I think there is a relationship between those rules and the liquidity of the capital markets that are clearly interrelated. And I think important to resolve if we want to create an environment where, British pension managers are investing more in British assets.
Would you be calling on the government then to reform those rules? Then?
Well, I think there's a big opportunity there, right, to help improve what capital market liquidity looks like, and also to support more active interest in listing in Britain.
Okay, brilliant. I'm interested, Jambu. What type of leader are you? Does it come naturally to you? Are you somebody who shouts a lot in meetings? Do you hold people to account, or are you sort of more maybe cabinet rather than presidential?
I think for me, my leadership style's evolved, right? It's evolved as a result of the businesses I've worked in, the people I've worked with. I've taken everything from, I've taken little bits from every environment I've been in. I've been in deeply technical, product-oriented businesses. I've been in high-growth businesses. I've been a software investor, and now I'm really fortunate to be leading Checkatrade. And I guess the summary of how I think about leadership is really around two core principles. The first is to be very, very empowering, right? And very empowering of a team, because I think my view is that when you hire great people, we've got an outstanding team at Checkatrade that's come together over the last 18 months, people that have worked in the business for many years and people who joined as I joined and more recently. That group is really, really exceptional. They hold themselves to a high standard. And I think the best thing I can do is give direction and empower them to go and do those great things. There's a second part to it though, and this is a bit controversial, but I think there's been this perception that leaders are out of the detail, right? If you're the leader in the presidential format, you are floating above. But I think for me, the thing that I've learned is the best leaders know exactly when to get into the detail. They are deeply obsessed with customer experience, the technology product we deliver, how we deliver it, the feedback that we hear, and how we can iterate. And I think that principle is tied to the ability to then take that approach and allow you to move at a velocity that is required in an increasingly speedy world. And so I was never somebody that, had this ambition to be a CEO, but again, very, very fortunate to have had incredible mentors, people that I've worked with, colleagues and peers who've really helped me learn how my own style has evolved. I also think the big thing that's probably changed my approach is becoming a parent.
Okay.
My daughters are 5 and 2, and it's made me infinitely more patient, understanding. It also makes you really manage your time well,
Yes.
because you know that they'll remember, right, when you're not around.
We're going to do some quick fire questions now. 6 quick fire questions to see what your reactions are, and then we're going to compare those to the previous guests we've got in the future. So first one, what was your first job?
I was a waiter at an Indian restaurant.
Who inspires you?
My parents, my kids.
If you had to appoint a celebrity to your board, who would it be and why?
Does it have to be living?
No.
I'm always amazed by Charlie Munger,
Okay.
who was Warren Buffett's business partner, I think for 2 reasons. One is really deep intellectual curiosity,
Yeah.
which I think is the most important thing in a board member. And 2 is a desire to seek the truth.
What's the best thing about your job?
Interaction with our team and customers.
And if you weren't doing this, if you could possibly imagine, what would you be doing?
I'd open a barbecue restaurant.
We'll definitely come back to that. And look, this question, if you were PM for the day, what would you do? But maybe if you were president for the day, what would you do?
I'll take the PM answer if that's okay. I think for me, it would be the planning piece.
Okay.
I think there's so much that follows on from that. And if
Yeah.
you can do that and you can really bring that into a place that's pro-growth, it would have a huge knock-on effect on economic growth, employment, and ambition.
You sure you don't want to answer the president question?
I'll pass today.
You can do. You're more than welcome to. We'll hold the whole episode. It'll be absolutely fine. Tell me about this restaurant, Dan.
I don't know. I think there's something therapeutic about the cooking. I've never had much time for it, but I miss the 2 foods that I miss from the U.S. They've gotten a lot better in Britain over the last 7 years since I've been here, is the barbecue and the Mexican food.
Yeah.
And I think maybe there's a bit more to do there.
That's interesting. Okay. Well, we'll see if you open a successful chain of restaurants in a few years. Let's talk about that work-life balance then, because it must be incredibly difficult because you've got a job that must be all-consuming, but then you've got 2 kids and a wife at home. How do you manage that?
I think there's 2 principles that are really important to me. One is I'm relentless about time management and prioritization. Really, really important to me that people are prepared for meetings, don't have unnecessary meetings, really focus my time and structure my time in a particular way. I spend usually Mondays on our internal operating mechanism, Tuesdays with customers, Wednesdays with our product team, Thursdays and Fridays wrapping up and catching up with others in the industry or our board members. And I find that structure really helpful. The second is work expands to the time you give it. And I find that flexibility around when and how you think about it is important. So it's not really balance for me. I enjoy what I do, but I also know when it's important to be present for my kids at their school events or at bath time, and also when it's important to be flexible with that. The last piece is I found the fitness to be really important.
Oh, really?
And there's almost a direct relationship between the amount of time I've spent in the gym that week and the mood that I'm in. I'm an early riser and early to the gym, and that makes a big, big difference in terms of managing it.
Well, I find in my job, in my life, I can be doing something, be fully present in that away from work, but sometimes the thoughts about work will creep in, and it's frustrating because you don't want to be thinking about that on a Sunday night maybe, or Saturday afternoon, or even 10, 11 o'clock at night during the week. Is that a struggle sometimes?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I find it a struggle.
Yeah, of course. I'm obsessive.
Yeah.
There's a lot to do. I love the business. There's a big opportunity. I know a lot of people are counting on us to support them, whether they're consumers or tradespeople, and I feel that responsibility very heavily.
Talk to me about work from home and the policy at Checkatrade and what your thoughts on it as well. It's always in the news at the moment. What is Checkatrade's work from home policy?
Yeah, we're mostly in the office these days.
4 or 5 days?
Yeah, 4 days. And it's made a huge difference for us in terms of positivity and our, just describe it as the overall office environment. Whenever somebody comes to visit our office, it's the first thing they say is this feels like a kind of pre-COVID office and vibe. Obviously, we're flexible, right? And I think that's really important to me when you've got things you need to do for your children or medical appointments or things, of course, right? Make sure that you do those things. But I think it's the evolution of where we're headed.
So you're absolutely fine with 4 or 5 days with a bit of flexibility. That sits well with you as a leader.
Yeah, I think the flexibility is key, right? And I think at the end of the day, that culture and what you build is really important. So that's sort of how I think about it. We've got flexibility around different types of roles that are more specialist, of course, that are more remote oriented. And I think that delineation is important as well. So there's some specialist engineering roles, for example, that are remote, and that's okay.
Cast your mind forward maybe about 5 years. What are the main challenges do you think that Checkatrade's going to be facing in 2030?
If I take a step back, this is a massive industry. The home repairs and improvement sector, 2.4% of GDP, employs 2 million people, and is still relatively undigitized, right? And I'm not saying AI is going to fix your boiler or lay your carpet, but I think there is a role for technology to play in accelerating that transition. So imagine a world where each home in the UK has a report that allows for you as a consumer to know how to make that home more energy efficient. Well, we've produced that now, and that exists, and any consumer can go and check out the Checkatrade Home Health Report to do that. And I think that's just the start of what the intersection of technology, AI, and really great quality tradespeople can be. And so there are areas like, imagine a world where a drone could help you understand what's wrong with your roof, and a great tradesperson could come and help you fix it. And I think that as we think about core areas of belief, like the green energy transition or how to rebuild the housing stock in Britain, we have a really important role to play there. I also think we have a role to play in helping make tradespeople's lives easier in how they run their business. We've got amazing tradespeople with amazing stories. We ran our first Checkatrade Awards last year, recognizing some of the best and brightest across Britain. And the stories of the work that they did, the charities they supported, how they got things done for customers was really inspiring. But we also know that tradespeople have a lot to do. They are time poor. They do admin in the evening and the weekends with their partners. And we can help them in how they run their businesses, not just how they generate leads for their business. So that's a really inspiring and exciting future, and certainly plenty to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got to put this scenario to you, Jambu. I've come to your offices. I'm coming for an interview. Middle management, let's say. What are the 3 main qualities you're looking for in me that will make me a good employee in your eyes?
I think for me, it's resilience, comfort with ambiguity, and optimism. And I think if you have those 3 things, you can learn almost everything else.
Talk to me about comfort with ambiguity. What do you mean by that?
I think we're a growth company, a company that's also evolving, right? Taking this great history that we have and foundations that we built and evolving into more of a technology-oriented marketplace. And part of our role is to help really define what that can be in a customer-centric way. And so if what you're looking for is perfect clarity on what to do or how to do it or what success looks like, I find that there are places where that's great, where there's a written playbook on exactly what to do and exactly how to do everything. But that I find is not helpful in a company that is in a kind of growth trajectory that we're on. And so that comfort with ambiguity, I think, is a really critical component to being in a growth business and being in a tech business.
That's really interesting. And finally, the final question. What does it take in your eyes to be a good CEO?
I work with an executive coach who's been an incredibly helpful mentor to me. And I think for me, you've got to have really 2 things. One is you've got to have a really deep passion for the product, problems, and team that you're working with. Because I think if you don't, it's tough. I think probably more critically, it's this real optimism and positivity that is required, because everybody's going to look to you and understand how you're doing, how you're feeling is a reflection of how the business is going. So there are many different personality traits and character types, and people who are broad and people who are narrow and people who are more financially minded and people who are more product minded. I think many people can do it. But I think those 2 things, I think from a values perspective, are really critical.
Brilliant. Jambu, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Really enjoyed it.
Cheers.